I used to think grief came with a kind of armor, like pain would make me stronger, wiser, untouchable. I thought no man would ever dare to hurt a widow still healing. I was wrong. Right now, I'm sitting on the floor of my half-packed apartment, bubble wrap sticking to my jeans, a stack of boxes labeled kitchen mocking me in the corner. I'm not crying. I did that already. I'm just still tired. Quiet in a way I haven't been in a long time. I almost got married again. I almost believed in a future that wasn't haunted. And then, in a moment that felt completely safe, I said the truth, the kind of truth that had been sitting quietly inside me for years. Mark will always be a part of me. Just one sentence. Just a name. Just a nod to the man I loved and lost too soon. Jason stared at me, like I had said something grotesque instead of something human. Like I had confessed to cheating instead of confessing to grieving. That night, he left my apartment without even touching the wine we were saving for the engagement toast. A week later, he returned the ring. No yelling. No long speech. Just this, "You're still married to a ghost." It gutted me, not because it wasn't true, but because it was. I loved Mark. I still do, in some strange, sacred way. But I loved Jason too. I honestly believed I could hold both truths in the same heart. I thought I could move forward without erasing my past. But Jason couldn't stand in Mark's shadow, even if that shadow wasn't threatening him. So now I sit here, unmarried, heart-bruised, humiliated by my own honesty. And I can't help but ask myself the question that won't stop circling: can loving a memory ruin your future? I used to think being a widow would make me harder to hurt. Turns out, it just makes the pain more complicated. And this is the story of how I lost both men I loved. One to death. The other, to ego. Mark died on a rainy Thursday afternoon 5 years ago. A delivery truck ran a red light. That's all it took. One stupid, impatient moment. One twisted, metallic silence that broke my world in half. I was 27 when I became a widow. Grief wasn't a wave for me, it was a slow leak. I didn't collapse. I didn't scream. I just dulled. Everything went gray for a while. I kept breathing because I had to. Because people kept telling me to eat, to sleep, to get up. So I did. Eventually, I got tired of surviving like that. So I started rebuilding. I became a grief counselor, go figure. Moved to a new city, not because I wanted a fresh start, but because I couldn't walk past our favorite diner without wanting to die a little. I joined book clubs. Took cooking classes. Said yes when people invited me places. That's how I met Jason. He was standing near the open bar at a friend's engagement party, laughing at some terrible wine joke. He had this energy, like he didn't need to be the center of attention, but always ended up there anyway. Early 30s, tall, golden brown hair, button-down shirt slightly wrinkled like he didn't try too hard. Confident. Present. We got to talking. Then texting. Then late-night phone calls. He knew about Mark by the end of the first date. I didn't hide it. I said, I was married once, and when he asked what happened, I told him honestly. He didn't flinch. That felt like a miracle. Jason didn't tiptoe around my pain. He asked thoughtful questions. He listened. He even encouraged me to talk about Mark, what he was like, what I missed. I thought, maybe this could be different. Maybe I don't have to erase the past to build something new. But over time, small things started to stick. Once, I compared a dish Jason made to Mark's signature risotto. It was meant as a compliment. Jason didn't say much the rest of the night. Another time, we were lying in bed and I noticed that the framed photo of Mark, one I kept on my nightstand, had been turned face down. Jason said he thought it might make me more comfortable. But I think it made him uncomfortable. I noticed, but said nothing. Because deep down, I was scared. Scared that if I showed him all the cracks still healing, he'd walk away. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to be alone. So I pretended not to notice when his silences stretched longer. When his smile faltered at the mention of Mark's name. I convinced myself it was just growing pains. But now I know, those were signs. And I ignored every single one. We had been together just under a year when Jason proposed. It was a quiet Sunday evening. He'd planned a surprise trip to a small coastal town, just the two of us, warm wind, crashing waves, and a beach so empty it felt like the world had paused for us. He handed me a seashell with a small velvet box inside. I remember how he looked, nervous but hopeful. Like he had practiced the moment a dozen times in the mirror. "Emily," he said, his voice soft, "I want to be your future." I didn't cry at first. I laughed, because I was shocked, and overwhelmed, and not sure if I was dreaming. Then I nodded, and through tears, whispered, "Yes." But then, maybe because I felt so safe, so open, I added something I didn't plan to say out loud: "I'll always carry Mark with me. He'll always be part of me." Jason froze. Not dramatically. He didn't drop the ring or storm off. He just paused. His smile faded ever so slightly, like someone dimming a light. He kissed me on the cheek, tucked the box back into the pocket of his jacket, and said we should head back to the Airbnb before it got too dark. That night, he didn't stay in bed with me. He claimed he had early work emails to answer. Said he'd sleep on the couch. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, touching the ring on my finger, wondering if I had ruined everything with one honest sentence. The next day, he left early. No text. No call. The ring stayed on, but each hour that passed made it feel heavier, like it was growing roots I didn't ask for. I waited a full week before I showed up at his place. He let me in, sat down like he'd been expecting this, and said it without anger, just finality. "I can't be second place to a dead man, Emily. I need someone fully alive, with me." I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just watched him reach into a drawer, pull out the ring box, and place it gently on the table. "You're still married to him," he said. "There's no room for me." And just like that, it was over. I left the apartment with the ring clutched in my palm and my heart folded in on itself. My friends asked what happened. I told them the truth. Some were outraged. Others were quiet. I didn't defend myself. Because somewhere deep inside, a small part of me wondered if Jason was right. Maybe I was still married, to a memory. And maybe that was the problem all along. After Jason left, I unraveled. It wasn't dramatic. No slamming doors, no sobbing in the rain. Just a quiet disintegration of all the fragile routines I had built to feel normal again. I stopped going to therapy. I stopped returning texts from friends. I skipped my book club, turned down weekend invites, canceled on clients at the grief center. My work was to help others through pain, but now, even that felt like a cruel joke. Grief crept back in like it had been waiting at the door this whole time. But this time, it wasn't just about Mark. It was also shame. Humiliation. Anger. Not just at Jason, but at myself. Had I done this? Had I clung to Mark so tightly that I choked any new love before it could breathe? Had I turned my husband into a monument no man could stand next to? I didn't know. One night, I pulled out the wooden box where I kept Mark's letters, the ones he wrote for special occasions and gave me as gifts. I hadn't read them in a long time. Some of the ink was fading now. I found one marked, "Your 30th birthday, in case I can't be there." I hadn't opened it the year I turned 30. It felt too raw. Now, at 32, I finally did. His handwriting was shaky near the bottom. He must have written it during one of his long shifts as a nurse, when he was always tired and scribbling notes on napkins or patient charts. If I'm not there, he wrote, don't let loving me stop you from being loved again. You're not betraying me by moving forward. I need to know you'll keep your heart open. Please don't let pain be the thing that makes you feel safest. I read that line over and over. Please don't let pain be the thing that makes you feel safest. That was the twist. Mark had already let me go. But I hadn't let go of my grief, not really. I had turned it into a shield. I wore it like armor, thinking it made me stronger. But really, it was just keeping everyone else out. Even Jason. Even love. The next morning, I called my therapist again. Same number. Same office. But this time, I told her what I hadn't said before. I think I was hiding inside my grief. And I think I pushed him away because deep down, I was terrified of being happy again. It hit me hard. Maybe Jason wasn't the only one who felt like there was no room. Maybe, neither of us ever truly had a chance. It had been about 4 months since Jason ended things when I saw him again. A mutual friend, Madison, was hosting a casual birthday get-together on her rooftop. I almost didn't go. But therapy had been helping, and I promised myself I'd stop hiding from life just because parts of it hurt. I showed up late, hoping to blend into the background. Instead, I walked straight into a familiar voice laughing by the bar. Jason. He hadn't changed much. Still impeccably dressed in that low-effort way. Still carrying that quiet confidence. But this time, he wasn't alone. His arm was around a woman, early 30s, bright lipstick, bold laugh, the kind of person who turns heads when she walks into a room. She was bubbly. Effortlessly flirty. And nothing like me. When she spotted me across the rooftop, she smiled and waved. Hi. You must be Emily. Jason's mentioned you, well, not by name, just, you know. The ex. I smiled, tight-lipped. Yeah. That's me. Jason avoided eye contact. He looked past me, like I was someone he barely recognized. I guess, in a way, I wasn't the same person anymore. Later that night, as I waited for the elevator, I overheard him on the balcony just behind me. She was still obsessed with her dead husband, he was saying to someone, voice casual, like he was explaining why a restaurant disappointed him. It felt like being in a threesome with a ghost. I froze. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because I suddenly saw him clearly for the first time. Jason hadn't left me because he wanted something real. He left because he wanted something clean. Uncomplicated. Easily controlled. That night, I remembered something from early in our relationship. A moment I had buried. We were curled up on the couch, watching some rom-com, and he had asked, half joking, do you still love him more than you'll ever love me? At the time, I laughed it off, kissed his forehead. Said, it's not the same kind of love. Now I understand what I couldn't explain then. Love isn't a competition. It's not a pie. One person having a place in your heart doesn't shrink someone else's. But Jason didn't want to share, even with the past. He didn't want me, not really. He wanted a version of me who came with no cracks, no history, no shadow of a husband she lost too young. And that version doesn't exist. I stepped into the elevator without saying goodbye. Not because I was angry. But because, for the first time, I didn't owe him anything, not an explanation, not my grief, and definitely not my shame. I walked away from that rooftop lighter than I'd felt in years. Not with regret. But with relief. Present day again. I'm surrounded by boxes, again. But this time, they're not reminders of heartbreak. They're symbols of momentum. I'm moving to Seattle next week. I was offered a position leading grief support workshops for young widows, women who, like me, had to learn how to breathe again after losing the person they thought they'd grow old with. It feels right. This time, the packing doesn't feel heavy. The apartment I'm moving into has big windows, a little balcony, and a blank bedroom wall I haven't decided how to decorate yet. There won't be any photos on the nightstand, not because I'm hiding anything, but because I don't need to prove to anyone who I've loved or how deeply. Mark is still part of me. He always will be. But he's not the weight I carry anymore. He's the roots beneath my feet, not the chain around my neck. For so long, I thought I had to choose. Between the man I lost and the man I wanted. Between memory and possibility. Between grief and love. But I finally understand, I didn't have to choose between the past and the future. I just had to choose me. I want love. I still believe in it. But not the kind that demands silence about my past. Not the kind that competes with a ghost or asks me to amputate parts of myself to feel worthy. I'm not unmarried because I'm broken. I'm unmarried because I refuse to settle for someone who needs me to forget in order to be loved. If someone wants a version of me untouched by pain, untouched by history, they're not looking for love, they're looking for fiction. And I've lived too much, loved too deeply, and lost too profoundly to pretend I'm something simpler than I am. There's a quiet power in grief, if you let it shape you instead of bury you. It teaches you how fragile everything is, and how fiercely you need to protect your own heart, not by closing it off, but by making sure it's open to only those who can handle all of it. So now, I leave this chapter behind, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. Jason taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn, that love should never feel like erasure. So let me ask you, is it wrong to carry your past with you? Or does the right person just walk beside it?